Bus driver spots kid entering forest, sees his face, and calls the cops. A bus driver becomes concerned about a little boy who walks to the forest behind his school every day instead of going to class and decides to follow him. What he discovers along the way leaves him stunned. Ron Morrison had been a school bus driver for 43 years and loved his job. He was friendly to all the children who traveled on his bus, and he would frequently engage in conversation with them to keep them entertained. When Ron was young, he used to be a Boy Scout. He met the love of his life, Lyra, when he was a scout, and they married and had a beautiful baby boy, Todd, years later. Ron and Lyra were happy with their marriage and never imagined anything could go wrong. But sadly, fate had other plans. When Todd was just 8, Ron and Lyra lost him in a bullying incident at his school. Some of Todd's classmates forced him to walk to the hilly area behind his school, where he slipped and fell into a deep valley. From that day on, Ron began to doubt children's innocence and believed that they could be nasty. After that incident, Ron quit scouting and went to work as a school bus driver. He didn't speak to the kids much because he was still reeling over Todd's death, but he gradually came to terms with his loss and became more friendly to the children on his bus. One day, Ron noticed a little boy on his bus who was unusually quiet and sat apart from the other children. He was visibly upset and didn't say anything during the ride. When they arrived at the school, all students hurried to their classes, except for that boy, who remained at the school gate. Ron waited on the bus for a while, hoping that the youngster would go inside soon. However, he noticed that the child skipped classes and instead went to the abandoned forest behind the school. This happened for a few days in a row, and Ron became increasingly concerned about his safety. He recalled how Todd, too, had been compelled to walk to the area behind the school and ultimately died. Fearing the child could be in trouble, Ron decided to follow him into the forest one day. He kept a safe distance from the child to avoid being seen, and he noticed the boy kept walking deeper and deeper into the forest. At one point, the boy abruptly stopped, removed his backpack, and began picking up trash and placing it in his bag. Ron was puzzled, and he stood frozen as he gazed at the boy cleaning the forest. Suddenly, the child noticed him and got scared. He hurriedly snatched up his backpack and prepared to run, but Ron stopped him. Hey, he said, approaching him. I don't want to hurt you. I'm just curious about what you're doing here. Don't you recognize me? I'm Ron, the school bus driver. What's your name? The little boy looked at him, teary-eyed. I recognize you, Ron. Please don't tell anyone that I'm coming here. My name's Stanley Hayes. But, Stanley, what are you doing here? A little boy like you shouldn't be alone in the woods. It can be dangerous. I'm trying to make my dad proud, he said, trembling. I want to be like my dad. What do you mean? Asked Ron, confused. My dad used to be a scout, Stanley said. He used to help everyone. One day, Dad was trying to save a girl from a bear, and he died. After that, Mom and I moved to this town. My old school had a scout squad, and I love being part of it, but my new school doesn't have one. Every day, I come here alone to clean the forest. Dad always told me that I should keep my surroundings clean. Ron gave Stanley a friendly smile. Did you know, Stanley, that you're incredibly kind and smart? I'm sure your father is proud of you. However, it can still be dangerous for you. Why didn't you approach your teacher for extra help? That's because, Stanley bowed his head, tears streaming down his cheeks. All the other kids laugh at me. They call me dirty for picking up trash and say I stink. They even call me a dirty janitor because of it. I hate going to school. I don't want to go back there. So I started skipping classes. Good Lord, gasped Ron. He felt terrible that Stanley was being bullied for doing something really noble and thoughtful for such a young boy like him. Ron decided he'd help Stanley at any cost. Hey, Stanley, he said, formulating a quick plan. I've got an idea for you. Idea? Yes, come with me. And yeah, you won't have to miss school starting today. Nobody will make fun of you. Instead, they'll all pitch in to help you. Ron approached Stanley's principal, Mrs. Stepson, and told her what had happened. He also said to her that he used to be a scout and that he had an idea to start a scout program in the school to inspire children like Stanley to continue doing good. Mrs. Stepson felt sorry that Stanley had to go through so much, and she decided to assist Ron in carrying out his plan. A week later, Stanley's school organized a competition for cleaning the abandoned forest and announced that the winning class would receive a prize. To everyone's surprise, at the end of the cleaning week, 6-year-old Stanley and his team of first graders won the competition. The forest was always spick and span from that day on, and nobody was afraid to go there. Stanley's classmates stopped bullying him, and they all started praising him for his work. Stanley's mom was very thankful to Ron that he'd helped Stanley and that the little boy didn't feel lonely at school anymore. But that wasn't all. After meeting Stanley, Ron's faith in children's innocence was restored. What can we learn from this story? Never give up on what you love doing just because others mock you for it. If you love doing what you do, you'll see the fruits of your labor soon. Stanley wanted to be like his father and keep the environment clean. Despite the bullying, he continued to do it, and ultimately everyone at his school began praising him for it. Young minds are like budding plants. If nurtured properly, they can do wonders. 6-year-old Stanley is an example for millions of people out there to keep doing what's right and good. See what happened next with this kid. 4-year-old Carson Walsh is a brave little boy who was accidentally left on a school bus and wandered into a nearby woods last Friday in Walls, Mississippi. His mom, Courtney Walsh, said that she and her husband got the shock of their lives when the Walls Head Start Center director said he'd not been at the school for hours. That's when she proceeded to tell me that Carson had been left on the bus. She said, "I just don't understand. How did they miss Carson that morning?" Carson had apparently fallen asleep, but the driver and monitor didn't notice he was still there after the other children got off the bus. Carson never got off, and that means the bus monitor didn't do a bus sweep, and they left Carson buckled in the car seat on the bus, Walsh said. She said Carson woke up feeling afraid. He says he woke up, he was hot, he was bored, and he was scared, and he got off the bus. He says he went up a hill and says, "Mama, I was in the forest," said Walsh. Carson won't let me out of his sight. He's constantly repeating it over and over. "I was in the forest." Apparently, a neighbor saw the little boy and called the bus driver who took him back to the center. Walsh said this could have ended badly for her son. "I cried and couldn't do anything but thank God for his grace and his mercy. Things could have been way worse for Carson. It was a danger for him to be left on the bus alone and then to get off the bus to find help," she said. WREG spoke by phone with Eloise McClinton, the executive director of ICS Head Start, which oversees the Walls Head Start Center, to get answers. "Yes, Alex, unfortunately, one of our children was left on the bus. We do have rules and regulations which our staff are trained on a regular basis," she said. McClinton admits that mistakes were made and the bus driver and the bus monitor have been fired, saying, "With human error, the child fell asleep and the child was left on the bus. But happily, the child was safe and returned back to his parents. Regarding the 2 employees, after a thorough investigation, those 2 employees are no longer with our organization." However, Walsh says she and her husband have contacted the Mississippi Child Protective Services and the DeSoto County Sheriff's Office with hope that charges will be filed against the former driver and monitor. "If I had left Carson in the car unattended and he wandered off somewhere, I'd be in jail. My face would be all over the news. Child endangerment, child neglect. I feel they should receive the same punishment," she said. A 13-year-old boy who was reported missing has been found tied to a tree on a plantation by the Ghana Police Service at Drobo in the Bono region. The boy was rescued on Sunday, May 28th. He's currently receiving medical attention at St. Mary's Hospital at Drobo. Information indicates that the boy was kidnapped by some unknown persons. In the interim, the police have launched a manhunt for the suspects. Also on kidnappings, it was reported on March 26th that 16 kidnapped persons, aged between 12 and 20 years, were found in a single room at Ankeful Zongo in the Cape Coast Metropolitan Assembly at the Central Region. The victims are believed to be foreigners as they're unable to speak any local language. They're suspected to be nationals of Burkina Faso, Togo, Mali, and Niger as they speak different languages, including French. The victims were reportedly kept in the room for about 1 month, and without enough food and water, they had emaciated. Upon picking up information, the chief and opinion leaders of the Ankiful community, together with the media, went to the house to verify, but the main door had been locked. Also, the security man guarding the house was nowhere to be found. The chief of Ankiful, Nana Abura Anankoma III, is appealing to the security agencies to launch an investigation and arrest the suspected kidnappers. The assembly member of Cape Coast Ankiful, Honorable George Arenful, in an interview said the matter has been reported to the Ankiful police for a long time, but the police have failed to act. According to him, the kidnapped victims have been signed to play football for some teams in Ghana, but had since been caged and left to fend for themselves. A 3-year-old Montana boy has been found after being reported missing for 48 hours. The child, Riker Webb, is healthy and in good spirits after his rescue on Sunday, police said. A couple in the Bull Lake Valley area heard a voice near their shed on Sunday and found Riker inside. Lincoln County Sheriff Darren Short told ABC News. Short said that the couple had been visiting their cabin and heard a whimper from the nearby shed. When they entered, they found Riker inside of a lawnmower bag. Short believes that Riker had taken cover inside the shed and slept within the lawnmower bag from Friday evening that he had gone missing until he was found on Sunday. According to the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, Riker disappeared on Friday afternoon after he'd been seen playing with his family dog outside of his home near mile marker 18 of State Highway 56. The office received a call on Friday at approximately 4:53 p.m. that Riker had already been missing for more than 2 hours. The search began near Bull Lake Valley area. Authorities said ATVs, drones, dog teams, and a boat were used to look for Riker in the initial search. Montana Air National Guard helicopters joined in on the search on Saturday. Flathead County and Spokane police were also part of the rescue team, providing drones as well as additional dog teams. The Lincoln County Sheriff's Office said in a statement that poor weather conditions made the search difficult. There were also severe thunderstorms in the area on the night that Skylar went missing. Police sent a code red alert to residents on Saturday asking that they search their properties and structures for Riker. Deputies ultimately found Riker just 2 miles from his home. He was hungry, thirsty, and cold, police said. Authorities said the area where Riker was found is inhabited by mountain lions and bears. Short spoke to Riker inside the shed before carrying him to the waiting ambulance. He was absolutely shocked and scared when I first made contact with him, Short told ABC News. Riker was transported to a local hospital and is expected to be okay, officials said. Short said authorities are looking into why Riker's parents waited 2 hours before reporting him as missing. We want to make sure we know the details of how he was able to walk away and why it took so long for us to get the call about it, Short said. He added that Child Protective Services also responded to the scene, and they and the police are looking into possible cases of negligence and endangerment within the family. A 7-year-old boy was struck and killed by a school bus Friday afternoon in South Suburban Park Forest, authorities said. At around 3:13 p.m., police were called to the 100 block of Walnut Street, where a boy had been hit by a bus. Family members of the child were present on scene and started life-saving measures prior to the arrival of first responders, according to police. The child had been identified as Connor Kazmarski, according to the Cook County Medical Examiner's Office. The boy was taken to Franciscan Health Olympia Fields Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. At the time of the incident, the bus, which is owned by Kickert Bus Company, was transporting students from Park Forest, Chicago Heights School District 163. According to authorities, School District 163 and police are arranging for counselors to be available both over the weekend and Monday when the school week begins. Both the school bus driver and witnesses are being interviewed by investigators, police stated in a Facebook post. The crash is under investigation by the Park Forest Police Department and Suburban Major Accident Reconstruction Team.